The Phantom Menace has been around for 25 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And in that time, it's had quite a lifespan. When it was first released, it had a huge older brother to live up to, the Star Wars original trilogy. And to be fair, there was just no way that it was ever gonna beat that. The originals were just too legendary. I mean, I guess it could have beaten it, like theoretically it could have just been better, but it wasn't. No matter which way you slice it, The Phantom Menace is simply one of the less impressive Star Wars movies to ever be made. Now, don't get me wrong, it is starting to look a little bit better in contrast to some new Star Wars products. And let's just say that for some reason, which is a total mystery to me, to be honest, ever since like, I don't know, 2015, The Phantom Menace has started to become way more highly regarded. I don't know why that could possibly be, no idea. But regardless, today we're gonna take a look at The Phantom Menace and inject it with the philosophy of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's right, we're gonna be judging it not by the franchise that it's a part of, but by the content of its character. And I gotta be honest, right off the bat, it's pretty obvious that its character's got some pretty big issues. Like a convoluted, confusing plot, or 9-year-old Anakin, or Jar Jar Binks, but we'll get to all that a little bit later. Let's kick it off with some of the good things, because nothing good ever came from being negative. And let's go on a hiking trip, because believe me, that's when everyone so badly wants to hear you start complaining and whining about how tired you are, and how sore your legs are, and how you saw Kenny get mauled by a grizzly about 20 minutes ago. No, please, keep going. We all care so much, I promise. Anyway, the point is that we'll talk about all the bad parts of The Phantom Menace later. Right now, let's just have a good time, man, come on. And what better way to have a good time than to talk about Liam Neeson. Osh, gosh, but gosh, what a man right there. What a manly man's manly man. But more importantly, let's talk about his character, Qui-Gon Jinn. He is by far one of the biggest highlights of the movie. Remember, when this movie came out, the only 3 Jedi anyone knew about were Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Luke. So when he made the prequels, George Lucas had the really challenging task of trying to represent the Jedi Order and what Jedi did in the galaxy. And the way he did that was by giving us Qui-Gon Jinn. This man is a gift to us all. He's everything a Jedi should be. Wise, caring, compassionate, loyal, handsome, smart, powerful, efficient, beautiful, strong, skilled, competent, long flowing shoulder length hair. Wait, what? Wait, it was, what do you mean it was fake hair? Now hold on just a minute, you hooligan, just a second. Man, you cannot trust anybody these days. Here I was thinking this man was naturally beautiful, but no, the hair was fake. Honestly. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that Qui-Gon Jinn is a consistently good character in The Phantom Menace. He's a great character. And in a weird way, he kind of reminds me of Gandalf. Just think about it for a sec. He's by far the most powerful out of all the heroes, but he's also the smartest and makes the best decisions. When someone needs advice, their first thought is, what's Qui-Gon gotta say? What are his thoughts on this? And now that I think about it, even their deaths are kind of the same. Gandalf faces down the Balrog in the Mines of Moria, only to be struck down and yet come back later in a somewhat different form. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon Jinn also single-handedly takes on a mortal enemy and also gets struck down. And then, and this is where the plot thickens, he also returns in a different form and continues to help the heroes. I'm not saying there's a bit of plagiarism going on here, but at the same time, I would like to get these two people in a room together and just, I don't know, bring up the topic, see what they think.
Epic rap battles of history. J.R.R. Tolkien versus George Lucas. Begin.
Sit up, never like you know it's supposed to pack it.
Another similarity is that both characters have a sidekick, of some sort. Gandalf has Aragorn and Qui-Gon has Obi-Wan. And speaking of Obi-Wan, he's also one of the better characters in this movie. Ewan McGregor was definitely the right actor for Obi-Wan, and I think he characterizes him pretty well. Sure, he was a little robotic, and it would have been nice if he had a little bit more of that Obi-Wan charm that we all know and love. But he was just a Padawan at the time, and with me as the obvious exception, most people aren't that funny right off the bat, so I can overlook his stiffness. Plus, we all know what a legendary comedian he'll become later, so right now, we play the waiting game, boys. We play the waiting game.
You want to run?
I learned from watching you.
Most of the other characters are pretty average. Padme's alright, I guess, but she's kind of forgettable, and it also doesn't help that the movie tries to tell us that she's 14, which absolutely no human being with eyes believes. Heck, even they didn't believe it, because if they did, then they would have made her actor 10 years older in Attack of the Clones too. For Anakin, they got a whole new actor to show that it's been 10 years since episode 1, and to show how much he's grown. For Padme, they were like, yeah, she was supposed to be 14 in the first movie, but she always looked closer to 24 anyway, so what do you say we just keep her? And they did, and for some reason, they just completely got away with it 100%, like no one called them out on it. But you know what, it's really not that big a deal. Aside from those characters though, basically everyone else in the movie is kind of forgettable, if not downright bad, but we'll get to this scumsucker later. There is one character that we just can't overlook, however, and that is Naboo Pilot 37. This guy carries the movie on his shoulders, and no, I'm kidding, it's Darth Maul. It's obviously Darth Maul. Darth Maul is legendary. He's very iconic. He looks like a Malaysian demon, and here's my hot take, he actually kind of sucks in this movie. Don't get me wrong, he has one awesome duel, and I think that kind of wins people over, but the actual character himself is pretty underwhelming. He literally has 3 lines of dialogue in the entire movie. 3. That's it. Boys, that is nothing. In terms of content, that is no dialogue whatsoever. I've heard parrots that speak more than Darth Maul. And again, Duel of the Fates does kind of carry, and that duel is one of the greatest duels in cinema, let alone Star Wars. But the character of Darth Maul only really gets good in the Clone Wars. He's just kind of mid up until then. The last good thing I'll say about The Phantom Menace is that it really does help the lore of Star Wars. Like, the world building is simply unparalleled. It's awesome. So many of the the planets and aliens and cultures and ideas are insanely unique and fresh. Like, how does someone just imagine up the idea of weird frog people things living in an underwater city? It's crazy creative, and it makes a ton of sense in the context of the movie, so nice job. That's really impressive. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this is where the Phantom Menace starts going way downhill, just rapidly downhill. Everything else in the movie is either incredibly average or just downright disappointing. And there's no better place to start than the plot itself. One of the great things about the Star Wars original trilogy is that the actual plot of every movie can be summed up in basically one sentence. Here, I'll try it right now. A New Hope. Farm boy rescues a princess, and together they destroy the Empire's weapon. The Empire Strikes Back. Luke trains to become a Jedi and goes to help his friends when they get captured. Return of the Jedi. Luke completes his training and fights the Emperor while the rebels blow up the second Death Star. See what I mean? The basic plots are all kind of simple. The Phantom Menace is not. Like, the plot is excessively technical, complex, and intricate. And by the way, this is not me saying that movies are only good if they have simple plots, because that's just not true. Some of the greatest movies of all time, like Inception or The Dark Knight, have super complicated plots that take a lot of attention to really follow. But the difference is that it works with those movies. The movies themselves are way more deep and detail-oriented, and most importantly, the plots aren't boring because of how complicated they are. It's actually the exact opposite. The plots are more interesting because of how in-depth the movies are. And therein lies the problem. The Phantom Menace is a way more complicated movie than any of the originals, but not in an interesting way, or a way that tells a better story. Instead, it's just really muddled with bureaucracy and trade disputes and legal issues all over the place. Let me do my best to give you a brief plot summary. Basically, the Trade Federation has a blockade around Naboo to protest the increased taxation, which I know just screams interesting sci-fi story right off the bat. Nothing more intriguing than that hook. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi attempt to negotiate with the Trade Federation, but it fails. The Trade Federation then invades the planet to force Naboo's leaders into compliance. With the help of the Jedi, Queen Amidala escapes Naboo, and they go to Tatooine to find a new hyperdrive, and there they find Anakin Skywalker, who Qui-Gon believes will be the chosen one someday and bring balance to the Force. They bring Anakin back to Coruscant, where Padme begs the Senate to help her overturn the Trade Federation, but due to political corruption, she is offered no aid whatsoever. The Jedi, Padme, and for some reason 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker go back to Naboo, where they fight off the Trade Federation by themselves with the help of the Gungans. In the process, Qui-Gon gets absolutely bopped, and Obi-Wan is left to train Anakin. And that's it. That's the Phantom Menace. That's the whole plot. Now look, is it the worst writing ever? No, the plot itself isn't inherently awful, but it is heavily bogged down with political blockades, bureaucracy, and legal mumbo-jumbo. And on top of that, the dialogue itself in the movie is pretty wooden, which is a problem that all the prequels have.
But Master Yoda said I should be mindful of the future.
But not at the expense of the moment. Be mindful of the living force, young Padawan.
Yes, Master.
What's this? Huh? What's this?
Generally, people tend to speak in big, long sentences, in ways that no real humans talk. The speaking patterns are so unrealistic, and everything is so formal and technical. However, to be fair, The Phantom Menace suffers way less from this problem than Attack of the Clones does. I mean, that movie is the king of wooden dialogue.
I don't like sand.
Treat me like white teeth.
So those are my problems with the plot and script. I think they're just too rigid overall. But now, let's talk about the last big issue in The Phantom Menace, and it boils down to two characters. The first one is Anakin himself. Personally, I am really just not a fan of child actors, and Jake Lloyd is no exception. No hate to him whatsoever. He did the best he could with what he had, and he did not deserve the backlash that he received. I mean, the poor kid's life got ruined from that movie, which sucks. That really sucks. But even aside from my personal dislike of child actors, I still just think it was a bad choice to give us a 9-year-old Anakin. I genuinely think that starting the story with an older Anakin and maybe using flashbacks to show how powerful he was at a young age would have worked way better. That being said, there were some good things that came out of giving us a kid Anakin. His relationship with his mother was done very well, and it felt like a genuine point of conflict for him. And the pod race was a good way to show his natural aptitude for piloting. But I just think that overall, the story would have been a little better if Anakin had just been a tad older. But it definitely could have been worse. And speaking of worse, that brings me to the final point and probably the most well-known issue with the Phantom Menace, Jar Jar Binks. Now, if George Lucas had actually been smart, then we'd eventually learn that Jar Jar Binks was the ultimate Sith Lord, who was right under all of our noses the entire time. And he would tell the entire galaxy to come over there and kiss him on his hot mouth, because he's feeling romantical. But George Lucas apparently hates fun, because he decided not to do that. He just decided not to go in that direction.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Instead, he decided to create the most annoying side character to ever exist. Jar Jar Binks is loud, obnoxious, goofy, floppy, irritating, and absolutely 100% not funny. Very few other characters grind my gears the way he does, and the inclusion of him in this movie is just a total mistake. Now, if he was a Sith Lord, maybe I'd have a better opinion of him. Maybe I'd like him a little bit more, but we got robbed. Anyway, my final score for the Phantom Menace is gonna have to be like a 6.5 out of 10. There's a few good things here and there, I guess, but so much of the movie is just straight up hard to watch that I don't think I can put it any higher than a 6.5. However, if anyone at Disney is watching this, then please do not try to remake the Phantom Menace. I really do not think you could do any better. I mean that. I truly mean that. And speaking of things that you should not remake, you know what really shouldn't get remade is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That is a gem that just should never ever be touched again and left alone for the rest of time. But to learn more about that, you need to watch this video right here. I go into great detail and I think you'll really enjoy it, so be sure to check it out. Thanks for watching, boys. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe. Catch you on the next one. See you later.